and I was like, did I just do an interview with someone who's like guilty? So let's rock and roll.
What's going on, guys? It's your boy, Tom Talk Trash, and today I'm back with my 100th interview of 2022, and I am joined by Steve Fall from NBC. So welcome to the show.
Hello, everybody. 100 episodes. I am honored. I need to get some confetti out here and throw it in the sky, but then I'll have to get someone to clean it up, so I probably won't get confetti.
Yeah, nah. As I say, man, thank you for coming on. But if we take this back to the beginning, my friend, where do you first discover wrestling as a fan?
Oh, we got to go back to 1992. That's right, 1992. Just like anybody, you channel surfing as a kid with your parents in the room. Suddenly I see the big boss man on the screen, and something about his personality, something about the way he was maybe dressed, because you're supposed to, respect a police officer. Suddenly you see a wrestler who's a police officer, who's also a police officer, who's also a wrestler. So suddenly they go hand in hand. But the first event I remember watching is Saturday night's main event. Main event is Hulk Hogan and Sid Justice versus Ric Flair and The Undertaker, and we're on the road to WrestleMania 8, and that's the night Sid Justice leaves Hogan in the ring, and that sets up us for WrestleMania 8, Hogan versus Sid Justice, the main event of the evening. So that's where I started.
Oh, wow. So one thing I am always curious to know from my guests with their start in their fandom is if you discovered that sort of wrestling today at the age you are now, but you had no prior wrestling knowledge experience, do you think you'd be into it? And then on the flip side, if you discovered today's wrestling at the age you were when you discovered Hulk Hogan and Sid, do you think you would have got into it?
I would think as an adult with, a bunch of kids, I probably would not sit down and watch, Sid Justice, Undertaker, Ric Flair. Just like as my father would come into the room as I was watching wrestling, he'd be like, like he would kind of like poke his nose up at it because he knows what it was like. He knows it's predetermined. He knows it's not a real show. But I'm, as a kid, oh yeah, go get him, Hulk Hogan. So as an adult, most likely I would not be watching the 1992 version of wrestling. That's why when people complain about anything about wrestling, I'm like, you didn't live through Giant Gonzalez. You didn't live through Mantar. You didn't live through all these tag teams and wrestlers who either you love them or you hate them. So in today's world, the product is much better. But would I be watching today's product as a kid? That's a hard one because today's wrestling is so strange. It's supposed to be like, some of it's supposed to be geared to children, but yet it seems like a mass quantity of adults are watching professional wrestling. So that's a hard question. I don't know that one. I don't know that answer. I played the fifth, sir. I played the fifth.
Fair enough. You could plead the fifth. So when it comes to, you talked about it there, finding Sid Justice and Hulk Hogan as you were flipping through channels. Did you sort of memorize the channel at that point and then was like, try and find the TV schedule to find out when it was on, and that became part of your weekly rotation?
That's funny because not until like 4 years after that, when I was probably like 12, around 1996, is where I finally realized and discovered that a lot of this was on the USA Network. A lot of it was. Like the one I just talked about, the first event I remember watching was on Fox because NBC dropped Saturday night's main event because of poor ratings. So Fox picked it up. But I didn't know. So it's like every Saturday between like 9 a.m. where I lived and like 12, Superstars was on, Wrestling Challenge. You go further into years, Live Wire, All American Wrestling. So it's very hard to find a channel when you're a kid because now in today's world, I can grab the remote and be like, USA, boop, get it to me. At the time, there's only like 60 something channels. I feel like an old man. There's only like 60 something channels. So I have to memorize or figure out when it's on during the day, what day it's on. And a lot of the times I couldn't find it. So not until I guess Monday Night Raw in January of 93 is really where I started to like realize, okay, there's a repetition to this. Because if you remember syndicated television, Superstars Wrestling Challenge, those shows were not on the same time in every state. So I could watch Superstars where I lived at say 9 in the morning. Well, in a different part, even New York, same time zone. New York is airing it at like 11 a.m. because of syndicated television.
Mhm.
Raw was completely different. That was on the same time. They told you when it was on. So, yeah, I guess it was up to the WWE to supply me with, hey, by the way, it's on at this time on this channel. Watch it. So, no, it took me a long time to memorize where the hell that shit was.
So if we move on to, was it, I just to clarify, was it Raw that really got you into watching it full time, or was it 96? Was
Oh,
it the
no,
start of Raw?
it was 92. Like I used I had a VHS tape. My grandfather really is what introduced me into wrestling, like pay-per-views that I didn't know existed. Because
Okay.
WrestleMania 8 is the first event that my parents actually purchased for me to watch on TV because I got so into wrestling in January of 92. My grandfather, though, would rent action movies at Blockbuster, Suncoast Video, whatever your rental establishment was. So he would bring me there and he'd be like, you can get two tapes. So I discovered next to the horror section, not horror, there
Yeah.
is, let me clarify,
Yeah.
there's wrestling. So suddenly there's the double stacked WrestleMania 4 VHS tapes, WrestleMania 2, Survivor Series 88. So I'm renting these. Then my grandfather showed me a little trick. If you take two VCRs and plug them into each other the right way, you can actually pirate videos.
Oh no.
So that's how I was able to watch the Hulk Hogan era because, as I said earlier, I tuned into wrestling when Hogan was leaving to go into Hollywood. So he was no longer around. So it was really my grandfather, I guess, who like hit it over my head, like, hey, watch these tapes over and over and over again. So finding TV was hard. Getting a
Hmm.
VHS and copying it and watching that over and over and over again, that was the easy part.
What was the VHS that you sort of watched over and over again and maybe wore out?
Oh man, Survivor Series 1990. I love Survivor Series 1990. Still love it. It has the greatest concept for Survivor Series. Winners of their Survivor Series matches go to a grand Survivor Series finale at the end of the night. So suddenly all the good guys fight all the bad guys who won their matches earlier in the night. Brilliant idea. They never used it again. Never understood that. But
I wish they did.
that, yes,
That sounds that was cool.
that in Survivor Series 1995, where they had the wild card, where bad guys and good guys had to team up together to fight other bad guys and good guys. Like those two concepts to me were just brilliant, and they never used them ever again. But yeah, Survivor Series 1990 would be the one, and I still watch that constantly.
Hmm. So as we move on in your fandom slightly, how does the start of the Monday Night Wars affect it at all?
Oh man, so it's funny in today's world how everyone on Twitter is upset with each other if you like AEW or WWE. Didn't have that option in 95 when Monday Night War started, but I'll tell you what, I personally took great anger towards WCW for hurting what I considered hurting my WWF. Like I didn't like if I saw you wearing an NWO shirt, I didn't go up to you and yell at you, but if you were a friend of mine, I'd be like, "What are you doing?
Mm.
What are you doing?" I got my 316 shirt on. I got my DX. I got my Rock, my Shamrock. Yet there you are, your NWO. So I took great offense to anyone who liked WCW because I felt like they were hurting my WWF, my Shawn Michaels, my Bret Hart, my Diesel, my Razor Ramon, Undertaker. And then you see them leave to go to WCW. I didn't follow them. I was like, you're a traitor. You were a
Mm.
traitor, Razor Ramon and Diesel. So my fandom was very glued into starting a backyard wrestling federation because like any kid who wanted to be a wrestler, you couldn't be one when you were 13. So you grabbed your camcorder, you got your friends to dress up, you recorded music off the TV, you're using your karaoke machine, you'd come down the aisle and wrestle on your trampoline. I did that for years. Had my own show on Cablevision.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Mm. So when it comes to one thing I am curious to know before we get into your backyard days and the Cablevision stuff
Yeah.
is do you feel like you were uh how do I phrase this? The WWE video packages and you basically would listen to the story that WWE wanted you to listen to.
Yeah.
WCW was trash and WWE was the best.
Correct.
Is
Yeah.
that pretty much it? Yeah.
Yeah. And yes, but I was not aware of how much you were hearing of WCW trash talk on, say, Raw or Superstars or Livewire at the time. So as a kid watching it, you don't really notice the back and forth the, tit for tat and, oh, making fun of them, making fun of this. Didn't really notice it. Honestly, as years went by, you start watching old episodes of Raw and Nitros and documentaries, and then you start to hitting you over the head. Alundra Blaze dumping the belt in the trash, or WWF having fake Diesel and fake Razor Ramon. I just thought it was funny. I didn't really think in my brain as a kid, why are they doing this to make fun of WCW? Like, I just thought it was funny. As an adult, you're obviously aware of what they're doing, but as a kid, you just think, oh, this is stupid. This is funny. Ha ha ha. So it didn't really affect me.
So when it comes to your backyard wrestling days, did your federation have a name?
Of course. I grew up in a town called Peabody, so PWF, Peabody Wrestling Federation, and there were a couple options for wrestlers. You could either pick like 5 characters, so you could be Rock, you could be, Road Dog, or whoever. Pick 5 people, so you have to be those 5 people. So coming up, it's going to be me as the Road Dog versus my friend dressed as the Rock, and we videotape it, had commentary, did the whole thing, and we wrestled, had entrance music. Like, we took it seriously. Like, some people, I think some kids were going out there being like, I'm gonna give you a suplex. Like, we were pretending that we were on Raw. We were we were doing it as hardcore as we could. And of course, ECW becoming a thing around that time. Then we're taking, not like, we weren't crazy. We have like those fluorescent bulbs and smashing overhead.
Tubes.
Yeah, no, we didn't do that. We would grab like our small like blow up tubes and be like, it's a steel chair, and you clack them in the face with it. A tube to the face does not hurt. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I did that for like 3-4 years, and eventually got so deep into it that I got into video production and took classes as a kid. Went to the local TV station and said, like, I got this show you want, and we edited it, and we had different camera angles. Like, again, I'm like 14, so I'm not just shooting on one camera. I got like 3 cameras going: hard cam, close up, side cam, audio, commentary, music. I had a crowd. Like, it was. I sold tickets to this thing. I'm 14, making money off my backyard.
So when it comes to pitching this to was it a TV station?
Yeah.
When it comes to pitching this to a TV station, what was your pitch as a 14-year-old? And then now, what would you do differently if you were to pitch it with the experience and the age you are now?
Of course. As a kid, though, you show up and it's 1999, so wrestling is the hottest thing in the world. So any TV station, I think at the time, was like, you have a wrestling show? Oh my God. Like, let's greenlight this. So I just showed up and I said, hey, I have this thing, and the local DJ, who was very, very popular at the time in my town, Jim and Joel was his name, and he was into wrestling. Everybody was into wrestling in 1999. So he helped me move this project along, and suddenly I got in the hands of the CEO of Cablevision, who was, at the time, that was the cable station, and I just showed him what we were doing, and he's like, oh, I love this. This would be great. It's Cablevision, you know what I mean? What are they going to show you more? Lunch menus of the day? Like, they need content. They need content.
Yeah.
So they were very happy with the fact that someone was making them something for free versus let's just show more snow day cancellations. So they were very happy with that. So it was easy. It was easy. I imagine in today's world, if I was an adult showing up with my friends that were all, so I'm like in my mid-30s. So if I showed up and say, hey, I'm in my mid-30s and I meet my buddies or my trampoline beating each other up, they might go like, this is go post this on YouTube, kid. There was no YouTube.
No. So if we move to like when you were doing this, how long did the show on Cablevision run?
About 2 years.
So when this was running, did you have any thoughts of like, oh, this might get shown and we might be seen by WWE? And like,
always.
What was the end goal? What was the dream, basically?
There was always the daydreaming of hoping that suddenly, Paul Heyman or Vince McMahon is like, oh, I love your stuff, Steve. Let's bring you all in. You have those dreams of fantasy where you're hoping that you're walking down the street and somebody recognizes you. And I never had an end goal. I was a kid, I was having fun, and I wanted to continue having the fun. There was never hey, I want to go to wrestling school. Like, I always loved wrestling and I always wanted to be a wrestler, but I don't think you have to be very committed to the fact that you want to go take bumps and you got to go to school. Now, a few of my friends who were in that wrestling federation went off and went and went and trained at Killer Kowalski's school, and they didn't make it, but yet they tried.
Mm.
I got deeper into video production, so that all changed for me and what I wanted to accomplish. Because you see wrestlers with their giant muscles, you're hoping you can just wake up one morning and have giant muscles.
Yeah.
That's not the case, unfortunately.
So when it comes to, you talked about getting deeper into video production at this point,
Yep.
do you think, and this might be a bit of a DeLorean question, but do you think if you hadn't done your stuff with your wrestling federation, you would be doing what you're doing now?
Maybe. So if we get deeper and if I move forward to like high school, when I was in high school, hated school, absolutely hated school, didn't like it. I was a B, C student, so I just didn't care for it. And when high school was over, everyone's like, "We're going to college. We're going to college." I didn't apply for anywhere. I just wanted to get the hell out of high school.
Mm.
And so that ended, and I didn't know what to do with my life. I became a pizza delivery guy for like a year, and I saved up a crap ton of money on tips. Moved to London, England, and
Ooh,
I lived there for about 6 months. But I went to the New York Film Academy in London, England. So
oh
I
yeah.
went there. So I went there 6 months making short films, very dark, weird, like, oh, how this penny get in my hand versus your hand, very artsy stuff. And I was very into that stuff. And I came back home after that and realized, okay, I want to do something that involves this. I don't know if it's movies or TV or whatever it is. I want to be involved with this somehow. So then I went to Full Sail University, which was at the time Full Sail Real World Education. And that's where NXT was being built. But I was just missing that time. Like I was just about done with college. So it was really because high school, I hated school so much that I wanted to do something hands-on. And
Mm.
so that's how I got into doing more production, because I didn't care for going and get a bachelor's degree in journalism. I wasn't interested in that.
How do you feel like maybe not having an education in journalism has maybe hindered you when it comes to broadcasting? How do you feel like it might have helped you in other ways?
Most likely, I would have started much younger. I see people, I love his work. Liam from comicbook.com, he's like 23 years old.
He's 22,
And
actually, man.
22. Oh, 22. So there you go. He's 22. I'm 36. I got 3 children, a wife, a house, career. So that I would have started much younger. So I probably would have been much better. But I think what's happened to me over the past year is once I started interviewing professional wrestlers, if you watch my first interview versus watching my most recent one, it's night and day. I've
Mm.
learned on the job versus probably some people are hammered home how you should ask questions, how you should prepare questions, how you should act professional. And sometimes I reach for headlines and sometimes I can bite you in the ass.
Mm. So you brought up there headlines, reaching for headlines and being bitten. Can you name a specific time that you've reached for a headline and been bitten?
I won't use specific names because this company's still a little mad at me, but I did an interview with a wrestler who was released from a company, and that wrestler shared his feelings on a certain media scrum. And that media scrum story just exploded and didn't think it was going to. And the wrestler used very certain language you don't hear very often.
Mm.
And he said some things, and that really pissed off the company. And the company reached out and said, "What the hell?" And I said, "I didn't know he was going to say that." And that's kind of what happened and that is where I learned a big giant lesson was I was reaching for headlines because I knew the media scrum was going to create headlines no matter what happened. What I
Mm.
didn't realize was I reached for a headline, but I didn't know what was going to happen to me on the other side. And I
Mm-hmm.
realized sometimes reaching for headlines is not the best idea because you might piss some people off not realizing you're doing it.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to, you brought up working for NBC and doing interviews for the 10 Count podcast now. So first of all, how do you start with NBC? And then how does the 10 Count podcast become a thing?
Oh, well, so video production, I got out of college. applied to this local station where I live, NECN, New England Cable News, and I knew every detail of TV because I just got out of college. So I knew every little aspect, waveform monitor, vector scope. I knew every name, every how to use it. Da, 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 da. So I got a job there as the weekend master control operator. That's the person who plays commercials. So when TV is live on air, whatever, and they're like, "We'll be right back after these messages," somebody, not anymore because they changed technology, somebody has to hit the button. Boop, we've gone to commercial. And then you count back. All right, you're back in 3 minutes. You're back in 2 minutes. So I got that job. And as time went on, I kept moving up in the world, robotics, audio, director. And eventually I got a job at NBC. And so I'm working for NBC and, you're doing your normal production. You're just working your job, doing your thing. And I see a story. Peacock pays $1 billion to the WWE for their content for 5 years. And I'm like, oh my God, I work for NBC. I love wrestling. I've been covering wrestling for years on my own podcasts. So let's see. I pitched the idea for a show on Peacock about what's being added to the WWE section of Peacock, because at the time it was very difficult to navigate Peacock in America. It was very difficult to figure out what was being added, where was the section. So I was going to create a show that helped you figure out all that.
That sounds awesome, considering what everything I've been told by Americans. That sounds perfect.
Yes, yes. So we shoot the pilot. The pilot gets picked up. Suddenly, Peacock is going to be like, "Oh, it's going to air on this day at this time." NBC wants it. NBCLX wants it. All these stations. We've figured out what day it's going to air, what time. We just finished the pilot on a Thursday. Okay, we send it out Thursday. Everyone's like, "Yeah, this was what we exactly wanted." Friday morning, the guy who's in charge of all this gets fired from my work.
Uh-oh.
So guess what? My project gets put in the trash can. So because nobody else at my time at the work was interested in wrestling, they think wrestling is, they look down on it. So from there, I'm like, oh my God, everything in my life was just about to level up. I was just about to be on Peacock. I was just supposed to host a show about wrestling. Everything that you imagine your dreams happening was just suddenly slammed down. So obviously mass depression hits. So you have to figure out what's next. So I went to every manager I work with still to this day. I went to every manager and I was like, what about this show? Peacock. They're like, it's resources. You got to need an editor. You need an editor. You need all these different elements. It costs a lot of money. We don't want to do that. And I'm like, crap.
Mm.
So I went to NBC Sports Boston, and I knew the president of that station loved the Peacock idea. And I was like, what about this idea, man, for Peacock? And he was like, too many resources. I was like, well, then I'm sitting there in my brain. I'm like, okay, I'm in this meeting. What do I got? And I go, well, what if I just interview wrestlers through Zoom? No resources, just me, a wrestler. I'll do the work. I'll email the people. I'll get the questions. I'll do everything. You just air it. And they were like, let's do a pilot. Okay. So over the years, I've created relationships with WWE, Impact Wrestling, NWA, AEW, New Japan. So I emailed the WWE and I was like, hey, can I get a wrestler to interview for this idea? Because you were part of my Peacock pilot, but now they don't want to do that. They want to do something else. Can I get someone? And they're like, yeah, sure. Here's Dana Brooke. You get Dana Brooke on Wednesday at 9 in the morning. Cool. All right. So that's how everything went. I did an interview with Dana Brooke. I had to write down 8 questions. They wanted to see my 8 questions first. My work wanted to see them. And they, okay, these are good. All right, all right. So I did my interview. It airs. The president goes, you know what? I like it. I like this. Let's continue doing it. And he handed me off to one of the editors, one of the executive producers. And here we are to this day, still doing it. That's like April or March of 2022 of this year.
Mm. How has you talked about doing it since April. How has the way you pitch interviews changed to either your bosses or to promotions themselves?
Well, the great thing now is the wrestling ones aren't policed. So at first they had to watch so Dana Brooke, I did my interview with Dana Brooke, they watched it. And NBC, and they're like, okay, we like this, we'll air this. From that point on, the trust has been there. So I do an interview, Nobody watches it at my work. They just put the graphics on and put it up on YouTube. So everyone is very happy with what I'm doing because I haven't heard them saying they don't like it. So
Mm.
that's a good thing. So the non-policing thing is working out for me.
Have you ever thought of something and been? Have you ever had something happen with it not being policed and been like, "Oh no, I hope someone doesn't watch this in case it is policed." If you know what I mean.
Yeah, yes, I have twice.
Fair enough. If you want to elaborate, you can. If not, fair dues.
There was. I want to elaborate on the one we talked about earlier, but I did one with Alberto Del Rio, and when I went into that, I was like, people are gonna go nuts. They're gonna love this interview because he's gonna explain in great detail on all the controversy that surrounds him involving Paige, involving his passed away wife, who her body is actually she's dead and her body is stuck in Mexico. So
Oh
like,
wow.
oh my, when I tell someone we're gonna have a half an hour interview, it turns into an hour and a half because he's giving me the greatest details ever about investigations, how
Mm.
Mexico police is corrupt. It was crazy. And after I was done, I was like, did I just do an interview with someone who's like guilty? Because according to police records, he's not guilty. He hasn't done anything wrong. He hasn't impressed any charges. So you're thinking to yourself, okay, this isn't a problem. So in my brain, it's like when a reporter goes to a jail and interviews a murderer. I'm not saying he's a murderer, but when you go to a
Yeah.
jail murder, they're like, "How could you interview that murderer?" Because I'm an interviewer. I'm biased going into these. I have no. I'm not like, oh, I'm going to make everyone love Alberto Del Rio. No, I go into this with the idea of, hey, I'm interviewing someone. I want to create headlines. I want them to create headlines for me, and I
You want
want
to
that.
tell their story.
Yeah, I want to share their story with the world,
Mm.
and get some good views out of it. So hopefully, it works out for me. And that was the one where nobody picked it up. That I was because usually interviews I do, Fightful and Wrestling Inc. and WrestleZone and Body Slam and PW Mania, like all these wrestling websites pick up the stories because they're headlines. I'm getting interviews 2 a week, 3 a week, so obviously that's good content for them to write. Um, but that was the one no one picked up on, and I kind of realized that nobody likes him because they believe the stories about him that are out there.
Mm. So when it comes to, are you now, because of that situation and
Mm-hmm.
the one we spoke about previously, are you more selective with the people that you choose to reach out for?
I'm not more selective. I'm more cautious, and
Mm.
I've learned that was a lesson I learned about a month ago, where I realized that don't you can edit things, okay? You can edit. And now I've been asked. Now these interviews have aired, so it doesn't matter anymore. Raquel Rodriguez last week, I had her. I interviewed her about 2 weeks ago, and I asked her about the White Rabbit. She revealed who she thought it was. Guess the name she said.
Right, well, I'm
She
guessing
said she said Bray Wyatt. Okay. Well, that interview ends. My phone rings. You know who it is?
Raquel.
It's
Can you edit
WWE.
it
It's
out? I'm guessing.
WWE. Yeah, it's WWE. And they're like, hey, listen, we don't know. Even they didn't know. That's what's great about that White Rabbit storyline. They
Well, they
called me and
didn't
said,
know at this point.
the people who were involved with interviews said, listen, we don't know. We assume it's Bray Wyatt. We don't know if it's Bray Wyatt, Steve. So can you remove that? And I was like, yeah, no problem, man. So I removed it and I put like an image of the White Rabbit popping up as soon as she's about to reveal who she thinks it is. The White Rabbit popped up, and that's happened to me a few different times. Um, Certain wrestlers have said certain things, and after they realize they've said them, they call me up and they're like, "Hey, can you remove that because that seems like I'm being very offensive." And some people have said very offensive things and never called me and said remove it, but I removed it because I felt like it was racist or I felt like it was being a bigot.
Mm. So, with you being a bit more cautious and about maybe who you interview, what is like your process to get someone for an interview now? Is it just emailing your contacts? Is it DMs? How do you go about getting interviews?
So the good thing about being working for NBC is you have an NBC email.
Mm.
So when you email, so for instance, I know plenty of people who might be better at interviewing wrestlers than I am. Maybe, I don't know. I'm pretty good. But they don't have an NBC email. They have a Yahoo, a Gmail. That's not going to jump out at you. So when I email, say, a wrestler who doesn't work for a company, like Kevin Nash, perfect example, Kevin or Eric Bischoff. Emailing Eric Bischoff took months to get because so many people are probably emailing him all the time. So just
Mm.
you end up at the bottom. Um, so certain people are hard to get, but I have the WWE's cell phone now. I have AEW cell phone. Impact Wrestling calls me on the phone. NWA. So like I have these people's personal cell phone numbers. So when I can call them and go, "Hey, any openings this week?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, I got Ricochet. Perfect. Let's set that up." So that's easy with the big companies. But when you're trying to get like, for instance, I was trying to get Paige for months and
Mm.
months and months and months. This morning, they emailed me back, and I've been back and forth with the agents over and over. Hey, is she free? Oh, well, yeah, but not this day. Oh, is she free on this day? Not that day. Let's talk next week. And then eventually, just keeps going on, keeps going on, keeps going on. They emailed me this morning, and they're like, "Hey, she's ready to do an interview, but now you got to go through AEW because she works for them." And I'm like,
I've had that recently, and it's like, oh man,
"You said I could have her, and now this." Um,
yeah.
I'm chasing down Brandy Rhodes right now. I got all of her
Ooh,
information.
that'd be fun.
I got cell phone numbers. I got emails. I got everything. But I don't have something to sell right now, so I don't want to talk to you yet.
Mm. Yeah.
Mickey James is the same situation. Same thing. Trish Stratus, same thing. Hey, I want to do it, but I don't have anything to sell yet, so let's talk later.
Mm.
Okay.
Who? Sorry, man.
No, go. Of
Who is on? Because every interviewer has a bucket list, right?
course.
Who is currently on your bucket list that you're like, if I could tick them off, like I'd be a happy man.
So that's funny because there's two bucket lists. There's one of I'm a little kid and I love these people, so I want to talk to them. And then there's obviously this will create giant buzz in media. Obviously,
Yeah, I have that now as well.
the giant buzz in media are obviously The Rock, Roman Reigns. I think talking to those two individually would create a ridiculous amount of buzz. Like I got to interview Sasha Banks, and that to me was one of those crazy moments of just getting an opportunity and falling into luck.
Mm.
So, but Rock, Roman Reigns, obviously, I've been chasing down with AEW. I won't never get him now, but I wanted CM Punk. I wanted John Moxley when he came back from rehab. There was a few people I was almost about to get, and then I didn't get. The Rock, I'm in contact with his agent right now, and unfortunately, he's on Black Adam production right now.
Mm.
So they're not going to do that. But I am talking to Brian Gewirtz soon.
Oh,
And he works with The Rock. So there you go. So there's some
might be
doors.
a.
There's some doors opening right now. But obviously, the childhood bucket list, I got to check one off recently with Mick Foley. And I met him when I was 13 years old when he just won the world title, but it didn't air on TV. So it was bizarre to see that. But obviously, Shawn Michaels, Edge, Chris Jericho, Bret Hart. Those are like childhood bucket list on this side. Over here is I'm an adult and I realize what will create giant buzz in views and revenue. And that's, the bigger names, The Rock, Roman Reigns, people like that.
Mm. So as we continue throughout the thing, one thing we haven't really covered, but where's your fandom at currently when it comes to wrestling? Or because you interview wrestlers, does it sort of become this is part of your job now?
So that's the unfortunate nature of this is I can't share on Twitter like I used to about how I feel about a certain company or a certain wrestler. The
Mm.
only thing recently that I exposed myself a little bit was that media scrum with AEW, and I had a great relationship with AEW, and I still do. But that if I wrote 10 tweets that day, I deleted 9 of them.
Okay.
So because I realized that unfortunately, I don't think of myself as someone important, but some people that I'm in the circles with might because I have a platform, and that platform might be a problem if I start bashing one company or another. As in, I have like 18 interviews in the can already.
Oh
I
wow.
haven't. And I haven't revealed them, and they're from months ago. They are from May and June because some wrestlers just bashed Impact Wrestling or WWE. But I've done interviews with like Marco Stunt, where he revealed in great detail about his frustrations in AEW. Big Swole, her frustrations with Tony Khan in his tweet. But I've also talked to many former WWE wrestlers, and they have shared their true feelings about how they felt the company treated them. Now, I think with Triple H in charge, things might would have been completely different for so
Yeah.
many people, but you never know.
So, what are you currently watching when it comes to wrestling? And what also do you, when you're interviewing someone, do you pay specific attention to what they're doing on TV?
Oh yeah. Oh well. The first part of your question: always watch Raw, always watch SmackDown. I definitely keep up with Dynamite. NXT to me is just a show that mm, it. I have again. I have a full time job. I have 3 kids. I have a wife. I have other hobbies. I can't watch every single thing I do. I do keep up with everything. I know exactly what's happening in every company, but I don't know the greatest of details if there was a backstage segment that had like a 1 second segment. So Raw and SmackDown always keep up on. I watch every pay-per-view, every every Impact, every NWA, every AEW, every WWE. I think those are like you can't miss moments because those are
Yeah.
just those are they only come around so often. But the rest of it, I always keep up with. Raw and SmackDown is always a must see, and Dynamite I always tune into to make sure that what I'm preparing for is going to be there. For instance, you brought up, do I know what people are doing? Well, of course you got to do your homework on someone, even if you don't know anything about them. So when you do an interview with them, you can pretend you know what they're doing. Um, for instance, I did an interview with. I was supposed to interview Ricky Starks and Eddie Kingston. What happened was I ended up getting Isaiah Cassidy. And I like Isaiah Cassidy. I like Private Party, but I don't watch Dark. I don't watch those other shows. So
Elevation, stuff like that.
so I had to go do a little bit of research just to fill in some gaps because I knew enough, but I didn't know I wanted more. And
Mm.
that was an interview where I had to go do a little more research on because obviously I grew up on people like, Kevin Nash, Kurt Angle. I had questions already in my brain when I got them for interviews, but him, I had to do a little bit of research, and the most famous thing at the current time for him was he was a meme of Keith Lee tossing him across the ring.
Oh yeah.
So, obviously you bring that up. You bring up the time they beat the Young Bucks in the tag team tournament. I think the second episode of Dynamite. So there was, I had to do a little bit of research on that. And I've done research on plenty of people just to be like, oh, is there more to this person than meets the eye?
Hmm. You talked about more to the person that meets the eye there. What is like your, how do you balance that whole work and being a family man and having a wife? What is like your routine to, what is your cutoff point where you're like, okay, do you have specific days that you're like, nope, I'm not going to record because I'm a family man?
Mm.
Or what is your routine to balance family and work basically?
Unfortunately, I do use the phrase often, family always comes first. No matter what anyone says to me, I'm always like, family comes first. But when opportunity comes knocking, sometimes you have to do the thing. You gotta be a little selfish sometimes, unfortunately. So if someone's like, "Hey, I have an interview for you at, noon." A perfect example. Here's a perfect example. Mick Foley. Hey, Steve, I have a free time at 1:15. Shit. Because at 1:30, I had to go pick up my daughter and bring her to school. And
Mm.
so I'm like, okay. So I made it all work. I hit Mick Foley, hit those questions, 15 minutes, boom, I was done. Got up, picked my daughter up, let's go to school. Like I'm very good at time management, but I also have a mother-in-law who doesn't have a job. So she has a job, but she, whatever.
Flexible.
She's flexible. So she comes over to my house constantly and watches my kids, the younger ones, for a few minutes while I do a 15-minute, 20-minute, 30-minute interview with someone. When I say this will only take 15 minutes, then it turns into an hour.
Yeah. So, what do you do though to stop that burnout from wrestling and from family and everything? Have you got things in place to stop burnout when it comes to your job, family, etc.?
So actually, recently too for NBC, I started interviewing bands and
Mm-hmm.
musicians.
I saw this.
So that's the thing too is I didn't just back up; I piled more on.
Mm.
And my thing, it might be a good thing and or bad thing, is it's like achieving a goal. You achieve that goal of chasing down this big interview that you wanted so bad, and you got it, and it tastes so good in your mouth. But guess what? As soon as you swallow that interview and it's done,
It's
you're
like,
like,
where's the next one?
I wasn't. Yeah,
I know that exact feeling.
yes, yes. So you're always chasing the next interview, and that's the one thing that's a good thing and a bad thing for someone who's trying to achieve a dream or accomplish so much in such a small amount of time. Is how do you do it? And a lot of it, only recently did I actually have a moment of like, how long can I last? Like, how long can this last for? I was pumping out 4 episodes a week at one point. Like
Mm.
one week I had Jordan Grace, Karrion Kross, Dave Meltzer, and Vince
Oh
Russo
wow.
all in a week. And finally, NBC was like, "Hey, why don't you just do 2 a week so you don't kill yourself?" And I was like, "Okay, that's probably a good idea." So policing myself is probably having someone police me randomly is a good idea, but yeah, it's very hard to pull back when you're
Mm.
doing so well. So you don't want to ruin your momentum by saying, for instance, I want a vacation for a week with my family up in the woods. I got a phone call. It's WWE. Hey, Lacey Evans is free. You want to talk to her? Yes. I set my
So
family
what
off
did
to
you do in that situation then?
I set my family off to eat ice cream, and we'll give me even bigger details. I rented a place for a week. So we're up in the mountains, having a great time on vacation, but it's Friday. They want to do the interview. Well, Friday morning, I have to check out of this place I'm staying. So we lock up the place, we take all our bags out, but we can stay in like the resort where we are.
Yeah.
So we go down to the beach. We're still at the beach, having fun, eating, da da da. So WWE's like, hey, 1 o'clock, she's good. And I'm like, I don't have Wi-Fi. I have my laptop with me, thank God. But I'm like, I don't have anything. I don't have anything. Shit. So I just drove back to where I was staying. I went in the backyard and just siphoned off Wi-Fi from this place
Oh wow.
and did an interview with Lacey Evans. So I'm sweating. It's 90 degrees. It's right before Money in the Bank. So I'm like dying. I'm sweating. I'm freaking out, thinking someone else is going to show up at this place where I'm on a Zoom call. What are you supposed to say? Excuse me, hold on. Give me a minute. I'm on a Zoom call with Lacey Evans. You can't. So
No.
it was very like guerrilla style, hoping it doesn't work, hope it works out. By the way, she showed up 15 minutes late. So I'm now sitting
What?
there. Now I'm sitting there like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. She shows up on the Zoom call with her baby, and I'm like, oh, hello. So it was very, very, because no one ever sees that part of my interviews. No one ever sees
No.
the first 10 minutes of my interviews or the last 10 minutes of my interviews are usually the juiciest because they start spilling the beans because I stopped recording.
Mm.
Like, oh, this person gave me a concussion. Oh, this person's a piece of garbage. Well, this person did this to me. And in my head, I don't say it out loud, but in my head, I'm like, why didn't you say that in the interview?
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah, of
So
course.
we've been talking for about 45 minutes, and I always love getting feedback when I've got fellow interviewers on.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about 45 minutes. Where can I improve? What did you enjoy, etc.?
I've had a good time. The one thing people probably don't want to hear about is the beginning of my childhood, uh, of where I started. For instance, when I interview, this is how I do an interview with someone who's not really familiar. I do what you do. I ask the first question is, how'd you get into wrestling? Channel surfing, friend, family? How'd you get into it? Boom, they tell me. Then you give them. Then I go in with a nice soft question. Then you hit them over the head with a hard one.
Okay.
Get them all comfortable. I'm revealing exactly how I do my interviews, but
Okay.
that's what you got to do. You gotta make them feel safe, make them feel welcomed, and then smash them over the head with something hard.
Okay. Okay. I'll bear that in mind.
Unfortunately, I've gained friendships through interviews. Drew McIntyre, good friends. Killer Cross, good friends. Victoria, good friends. They after the interview, you realize you during your interview, you realize something more has happened here. It's
Yeah.
not just I ask you a question, you answer your question. Like there is development, there's friendship, there's kinship, and suddenly after it's done, you start talking, and then you're like, oh, we're not even talking about wrestling anymore. We're just talking about life. We're talking about friendship. We're talking about, hey, what'd you eat today? Stuff like that. And then you realize, okay, there's more here. Some people are like, I did an interview with one wrestler, and I was like, "Well, thanks for being here on NBC's 10 Count. I've had a great time." Da, da, da. And he's like, "Bye," and just hits the end button. Clearly, that was just an interview.
Yeah,
So
I know.
no, but I think you've done a great job so far. I don't know what people want to know about me, so that's the thing.
Yeah, I just like personally, I just like to go from the beginning because it helps me with telling the story.
Yeah, of
But
course.
that's just something that I'm working on. But as we look at wrapping this up, Steve, we're going to do a quick segment that I call generic questions. Those of you that have seen my interviews before will know this is where I ask my guests their favorite match, favorite pay per view, favorite
Oh,
wrestler's theme, favorite tag team, and favorite wrestling superstar or wrestler of all time. Basically, questions that Steve might get asked on social media quite regularly. So now he'll have a place to be like, look, I've answered this. Please go watch this. So, what's your favorite match of all time?
favorite match of all time. I don't have a favorite match anymore, but for so long, Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, WrestleMania 25. I probably could have acted out that match on both sides. I watched it so many times.
Why does that speak to you so much?
I've always been a Shawn Michaels fan since I was a little kid. I used to dress up as Shawn Michaels when I was a kid. I used to dance around my house like Shawn Michaels. I believed I could be Shawn Michaels. Like there was a moment of seeing just I don't know, like perfection. Like I
Mm,
don't know how you can get better than that. In a psychology, in a good versus evil, light versus dark, the placebo build up to well, actually that was 26. But
I agree,
it
though. Well, that
yeah,
was a
yeah.
great.
Was a great video package. But yeah,
Mm,
the build up to that, just how can you get better? How can you get
mm,
better than two of the greatest wrestlers of all time at WrestleMania killing each other for our
mm.
entertainment?
I agree. Favorite pay per view or event of all time?
Oh, well, I'll have to give two answers. One that I attended ECW One Night Stand 2006, witnessing Rob Van Dam defeating John Cena for the WWE Championship inside the Hammerstein Ballroom. I was 10th row. Oh, actually, I have. As I say, I'm sitting in my chair right now.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah,
cool.
got my chair right here. So that to me is my favorite event I've ever attended because I've attended so many events now. Um, Nothing can top that night of just I always wanted to go to an ECW event. I was too young. It was also in Philly, so I was never
Mm,
available.
yeah.
So being able to go as like a 22-year-old, it was outstanding. But the greatest wrestling event of all time? That's so hard. That's a hard one because there's so many. What's the criteria? Is it like if it's for
Just an,
commentary? If
I
it's for
always say an
commentary,
event you enjoy.
oh, well, I already brought it up earlier, but Survivor Series 1990 is an event that I could watch every day, all day, any day. But as I think a lot of people say, Royal Rumble 92 for the commentary is
Mm,
outstanding. Don't watch the undercard. Just watch the Royal Rumble match.
I agree. Favorite wrestling tag team of all time?
Personally, for me, I love the New Age Outlaws. Something about them always spoke to me as a kid, and it's still nostalgia. So I think the nostalgia part is still inside me. So it will always be New Age Outlaws. People probably say Hardy Boys, Dudley Boys, Ed and Christian, whatever. But no, there was no one hotter at one point than the New Age Outlaws.
Mm. Favorite wrestler's theme of all time?
ah, hmm. Man, these are it's so hard to say because I do randomly will cook in my living room to Roman Reigns' current theme song.
Wow.
But I guess Shawn Michaels, sexy boy. I just love
I,
it.
I can imagine you cooking to that for some reason. That makes me laugh.
I love it. I love Shawn Michaels. Except if you watch 1997 Raws and pay-per-views, you will not like Shawn Michaels. But if you watch anything that does involve 97, you'll love Shawn Michaels.
Mm. Favorite, and then finally, as we wrap this up, favorite wrestler or superstar of all time?
It will be Shawn Michaels.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people have that answer, and that's okay because it's like saying, like, what's your favorite band? People probably say the Beatles, or people will
Or
probably say,
Metallica. Or
or Metallica. Like, there's a common thread in certain genres: favorite movie, favorite musician, favorite actor. Like, obviously, people pick those people because they're so good at their jobs. And Shawn Michaels is 100% one of those people who's just like, when he was on, no matter what he did.
just to as a bonus question to wrap this
Yeah.
up, 90s Shawn Michaels or 2002 to 2010 Shawn Michaels?
the 2002 run was his better run, but the glue that held the WWF together was Shawn Michaels in the 90s, because untouchable. And when we got to the 2000s, there were so many good wrestlers that, like, Shawn Michaels was great, but there was, like, you had so many people who were also great who he could fight. In the 90s, it was like, oh, we have Shawn Michaels and Henry O. Godwin and Skip from the Body Donnas. Like, I love these people, but Shawn Michaels was above and beyond better than all of them. In 2000s, everyone was good.
So as we wrap this up, Steve, the question I end all my interviews on is, with YouTube, with podcasting, with social media in general, we're all sort of going to live forever in some sort of way. So what is one piece of content from your good self you want to be remembered for? And then what is one that you're like, if you could forget that, I would appreciate it?
The one I want people to forget is the one that did really well recently about a certain media scrum. I'm almost leaning to deleting it because of just the backlash it created, and I don't want that ever. I love wrestling. I don't want to hurt wrestling in any way. I don't care what company you work for, and I feel like I did. So I actually have been, like, struggling with that lately. Of how did I let that happen? I let it happen. I did that, and I don't like that. So that's one piece I wish I could get rid of. The one I want people always to see probably is that I got to interview Sasha Banks, because that is a thing that a lot of people don't get that opportunity. Like, if you look at the list of people she's done interviews with, it is short. It is very short, and I get to be on that list of people who I think are just, like, I feel like I'm a pebble compared to these giant mountains of companies that got to talk to her. But that's one thing I hope people always see is, holy crap, you talked to Sasha Banks?
So I want to say thank you to Steve for coming on as we wrap this up. Where can the good people find you and all your content?
Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Steve Fall. I have an Instagram, which I pretty much don't use. I have a Facebook that I post family photos of if you want to see babies, Steve Fall. But you can obviously find me on Mondays and Wednesdays on NBC Sports Boston. As I'm talking to you right now, I'm not sure when this will air, but I have a very emotional
Tuesday, hopefully.
Tuesday. So, as this was already aired, but I'm very emotional interview with Kimberly, talking about her recent history with her husband and the abuse that she was involved with. It is very emotional. There's crying. It's going to be interesting. But that aired on Wednesday, and then coming up on the Monday before this, I got Chris Masters talking about the NWA pay-per-view that he got left off of. He'll share his thoughts.
Oh, wow. So that sounds really cool, man. But obviously, if you guys like this video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Tom Talk Trash. Follow me on Twitter at Tom Talk Trash. Follow bodyslam.net with Cassidy Haynes for my show, The Wrestle Watch Podcast. And follow The Wrestle Watch Pod on Twitter to help us pick the match that we're going to watch every week. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you for 100 interviews. Much love, everyone. And goodbye.